彼の残した言葉の中にもあるんですが、いい写真を撮るための最初の条件、これはカメラを持っていることだと。彼が一番思考していたのは、多くの人にいかに写真を撮ってもらうか。
1960年代に前谷さんというオリンパスの技術者がいましてね。
カメラが当時はまだ高級品なので、前谷さんをはじめとする開発の方々が多くの人に使ってもらうにはどうしたらいいかって考えた中で、カメラ自体をもっと安く作りたい。
当時6000円で作れないかっていうふうにできたカメラです。
そして当時高かったフィルム代、現像代を少しでも負担を減らしたい。そうしたらハーフサイズのカメラを作ろう。そうすると倍撮れるのですごく経済的です。
で35ミリカメラの24枚だと48枚撮れます。それが非常に画期的だということで、使われた。ペンが出た時にオリンパスを持って家族写真を撮ったりなんかする人が非常にいましたですね。
主にプロを中心として使う機材が変わってきていた。なるべくいいものを作ろうと各社していて、どうしても大きくなってしまっている。その中で前谷はやっぱりプロが本当に求めるものってそういうことなのかっていうことに疑問を感じて、その中で生まれたのが OM-1 だと考えています。
結局彼がこれ集大成なんですね。やっぱりかなり命が吹き込まれたカメラではないかなっていうふうに僕は思います。
When I got into the newspaper business, it was just coming off the time when 2.25 was kind of the equipment preferred. The guy that hired me came from the speed graphic day, the 4x5. As technology progressed, all of a sudden it was accepted that 35 millimeter was great for newspaper work. It's not as physically imposing as a larger camera. The more I become invisible, the more I can become part of the scene, the more the photographic opportunities present themselves to me. The camera, it becomes a productive tool. It's there for a purpose. Maitani realized that, and that drove the original design of the OM. When you put it in your hand, everything was where you wanted it to be. The aperture is right here. My two front fingers take care of that. Other fingers fall back to the shutter speed. It's an enabler, it's a conduit, not an interference between you and what's happening.
1996年にオリンパスは最初の民生品のデジタルカメラを出したわけですけれども、フィルムであろうとデジタルであろうとないものを作るというのは全社共通で今でも一番ベーシックなところに流れているのではないかなと考えます。
デザインを検討するときにスケッチを書いて最初検討して、その次にですね 3D データを入れてからこのようなラフな削りのモデルを作ります。でこれをベースにボタンの位置が適切であるかとか、あるいはグリップ性能はこれでいいかとかっていうのを検討していくんですけれども、我々が一番に考えていることはやはり使われる方、ユーザーのことです。
There's certainly an emotional connection with your camera. As soon as you pick it up, you know, you have a feeling. It's the design, it's how it looks, and it's how it's going to support you in achieving the image that you want to capture. Size and portability and mobility in photography is a message that we've been talking about for decades. The philosophy of the Olympus cameras is being able to shoot everywhere. We had a photographer go to Antarctica, and obviously you've got crazy low temperatures there. We created technology that enables them to do that. If you were that customer, what would the end solution be that you would want? It's important to always be thinking about what do people need, what are they going to need, what's the future going to be, and to aspire to deliver that.
災害に遭われた方が取り戻したいものの最も大事なものの一つがやっぱ写真なんですね。それって単なる現像された紙ではなくて、その当時の家族の思い出がやはりそこに残っているってみんなが思うので、思い出を取り戻したいという気持ちがあると思うんです。つまり写真にはそれだけの力があると 思っています。
I've got a photograph of our son. I think he was a year old. It's got the catch light in his eyes. Wonderful moment of him getting ready to tap the glass. It's not a great photograph, but it's a great moment. Wow, look at that. I remember that. Oh, look at this. You know, raising your kids, the pains and the struggle and the exhaustion and the joys and all these things that occur. What a wonderful confirmation it is of you as a human. This is who we are and who we were.
今でもそのものを作るにあたってはお客様の声というのをすごく大事にしています。舞谷が残した言葉の一つに、我々はカメラを開発提供しているんではなくて、カメラを通じて人々が幸せになることを提供しているんだという言葉があります。ないから作る、その精神というのを日々実現しようと、これこそが社会に対するオリンパスの役割だと思っています。
Good day, good day, good day, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Red 35's live stream. How are you all? Goodness, so many people here already chatting along. That's very good to see. And you have seen the title today. We are going to have a fantastic discussion and also answer some of your questions about the OM System's latest camera, the OM-1. I hope you guys can hear me okay. And I do sincerely hope that there will be no hiccup today. And looks like fairly stable for so far, as far as I can tell. And so before I start the stream today, I do have something to announce, and I have set up a charity page, which is actually, the link is in the video description, so you can actually click on it to donate to anyone who's in emergency needs in Ukraine at the moment. So it's all for charity. So if you are generous enough, you're very welcome to click on the link and donate some money, and that is actually going straight to the British Red Cross charity, and then from there they will send it to the relevant people to start the humanitarian aid for the Ukrainian people. So hopefully that's all done. Nice and yeah, just be generous. Okay, so just before I continue to chat, let me just show you guys. Yes, this time, unlike last time, all three of us have the camera now, and this is right here. This is the OM-1, and the last time when we sat together, none of us has touched the camera, so this time is totally different. We have used it, and that's why we set up the stream today to share our experience when using the OM-1 for the last couple of weeks, or whatever, however long that is for each of us, and we'll just share our experience and tell you exactly how we feel about the camera, not only in terms of the handling, but also technical improvements, and also, as you know, I don't know if you follow my social media, and but I have actually done a few professional shoots already, and I have edited all these photos, so some of them already on Instagram, so you can actually check them out, and it's actually pretty amazing. But we can talk about all of these in a moment. So let's welcome our guests together. So I'm gonna bring them all in, and there we go. Okay, so hey. starting from the right is Rob, of course, Rob Trek, and in the middle is Peter Fosgard, and of course myself, Jimmy Cheng, Red 35. So for those who are not familiar with this channel and also any of our channels, let me just introduce Rob. Rob runs the channel as well, and he's a Micro Four Thirds shooter, and he is a very experienced Olympus user. And Peter Fosgard, he's an OM System ambassador, and he based in Finland, so he also a basically technical know-how and an encyclopedia within the Olympus family. So he knows everything inside out. Don't ask me any of that though. And I'm actually also an OM System ambassador, and but I shoot with Olympus gear exclusively for all my professional jobs, not only for stills but also for video. So I will be able to answer a lot of the video questions if you have any. So there you go. These are kind of very briefly with our background, and maybe we start the ball rolling and start welcoming. And so Rob, welcome to the channel again. And
Thank you.
So let's start with you first. And I know
Yes.
you have your camera OM-1. Is it 2 weeks ago or a week ago?
It's about a week and a half.
A week
days.
and a half. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's kick it off then. So, how do you feel about the OM-1, generally speaking? You know, from all the
Well,
other Olympus camera that you used before. That's your first impression.
I
How do you feel about it?
yeah, I love it. I mean, it's really a nice upgrade from my M1 Mark III in a lot of ways that I appreciate even more now than when I first got it, 10 days ago. And the things, like initially when I got it, people asked me about the EVF and the live view. The quality of the screen was upgraded tremendous. I'm like, what's the big deal? It's just a few more megapixels, right? But I went out today because I hadn't picked up my M1 III in a few days. And when I put the EVF up to my eye on the M1 Mark III, and then I went back to my OM-1, I was like, oh my goodness. It's a lot nicer than I gave it credit for when I first got it. That's kind of what hit me just today. But every day I'm finding new things that I really like about it. I mean, I had very high expectations for the autofocus and the video. Those are the two main things I was looking at. And definitely the autofocus has impressed me. And, the new animal detect, I've been having a lot of fun with that with my dog Ellie. And I can finally get a lot more keepers of her. Because someone made a joke about who buys a camera, take pictures of their dog or do video. And I'm like, that's the whole reason I got into photography. Let's take pictures of my dog, And so I'm very happy about that. And it hasn't disappointed me. The bird detect has also been equally excellent. I have one video on that where I took it out. I didn't really focus on bird detect, but I did a few shots like that, and they came out really well. So it's getting me into wildlife photography now, something I never really approached before, because it was just I always thought it was too hard, and I never really I don't have a 300 f4. I just got the 75 to 300, but the kind of images I can capture now with the bird detect, I was never able to do before on my own. It was just so hard. So like I said, it still takes about 90% skill to do bird photography well.
Yep.
But this camera definitely does a lot of the work for you in terms of the autofocus.
So you think the new deep learning subject tracking really kind of help you get into these sort of wildlife animal kind of shots that you don't normally do?
Exactly. Yeah. Now I'm looking all over for birds and animals and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I can get that like this, right?
Yeah. Time to get a longer lens now.
Yeah. Trust me, the 300 f4 is on my short list.
Okay, great stuff. Peter, what about you? How long have you had the camera, and what's your first impression of the OM-1? Oh, hang on. Peter, I think you're on mute. No noise from you, Peter. I don't think I've muted you. I don't think I can actually mute you. Okay, we have our first technical issue here today. Okay, what's going on here? Let me just see if I can actually adjust anything here. I don't think I can actually adjust anything. Peter, would you like to come out and come back in again? Just in case. Yep, okay. Right, while we're waiting for Peter, and let's maybe share my experience about the OM-1. Okay, I've had it for probably about 3 weeks now, and I think I share your enthusiasm, also your view or impression, Rob. And when I first got it, I think oh, hang on, let me just get sorry, Peter's back in now. Let me just try to bring him in. Okay, Peter.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go. Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's no problem.
The only
Okay. Let's.
problem is I have an echo. I can hear myself on my
Oh, right, okay.
But
no problem.
it's better
And
than.
let's continue. So, Peter, how long have you had the camera, and what's your first impression of the OM-1?
Well, I've had it for a couple of days after it was launched. I think I got it, and I've used it since. Now I have my own. The first one is here, and the second one I just picked up. It's still in the box.
Same here.
So
My second one's still in a box.
Yeah, I haven't opened the other one. So I bought two, and the reason is that I've still been using EM1 Mark II. This is pretty annoying. Can I hear my voice just like a couple of seconds after? I don't know what we can we do anything about that?
Do you have a browser on?
Yes.
Mute your browser.
It is mute. Yeah, there's no sound on that. No.
Oh,
I just muted mine.
And now I still can hear myself.
Okay.
There's something wrong. Is it okay now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you clear. Perfect.
No, I can't hear anything. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, now the echo. No, it's not gone. But anyways, the reason I got two of them was that because I've been still using EM1 Mark II for somewhat professional work. And it's still a good camera, but the problem is that if you have two different type of cameras, the buttons are a bit different from Mark II to Mark III. Now I have two identical cameras, which is a good thing. And my first impression is that that's one of the reasons that I was very happy to sign a contract with OM System because of the camera. It's so good that I believe that they have a bright future. It's so much better, and I was astonished. And I make a video about that, and I found 20 new things that will help my photography. So that's quite a lot, and I think that's something that is worth having. and the best parts, of course, is it is fast. I don't need the 120 frames per second, but everything works so fast, so it's so much more pleasure to use, and the AF is much better, and everything is so much better.
Absolutely, yeah. And I definitely I was just halfway talking about it. I think I share both of your views as well. And when I first got the OM-1, I guess the first thing that really even though that we already knew the spec, we read the spec, we kind of understood what it is, but until you really held the camera, that you wouldn't realize how good it is, especially the EVF. And I think that I kind of mentioned a few times already in my recent videos, the EVF is what shocked me the most, especially when as a professional, you use your camera so for many hours at a time, and the EVF is almost like your window to the world, and you just keep looking at it. So when you have a really nice, bright and clear EVF, it really changed the perspective and also changed the whole experience. And then I was never really complaining about the old EVF with the EM1 series or any other Olympus cameras before, but like I said, in the last two years since lockdowns, and I think I've been staring at the screen for too long, and then my eyesight is definitely getting worse every day, and I found it quite hard to see some of the pixels anymore. And so the new EVF does give me the renewed confidence, especially using manual focusing, because I do manual focus a lot for video work. So having a really nice sharp EVF does help me in nailing the focus a lot quicker and more accurately as well. But any other things, I think the speed, the AF speed is definitely phenomenal, and but there's something I will talk a little bit more about the AF speed a little bit later. I already mentioned to Peter and Rob just before we started the stream. But the AF speed is phenomenal. The AI tracking works really, really well. Even if you're not into wildlife, like Rob just said, the AI subject really kind of get you into it, just because it's so easy to use. All these little boxes doesn't really excite you, and when you see them suddenly highlight this animal and then little box highlighting the eyes and everything, you just sort of, oh, maybe I can take a shot like that, and it's just so quick and it's very easy to do. Obviously, like Rob said as well, I'm not a wildlife guy, and I don't have the experience or skill to take like award-winning shot, but then it does make you interested in it, and maybe you never know. I might turn myself into a wildlife photographer one day just because of this, and so that would be something to celebrate. So let's talk about a next point here and about the OM-1. And so before we continue, guys, and I know you're all excited that we're all here, but if you have any questions about the OM-1, if you want to ask any of us about anything, remember to highlight in the chat room red 35 so I can see the question, and then I can highlight it, and I can bring that back in when it comes to the Q&A session. And that way it's easier for me to track back, and then easier to find the question that you want to ask as well. Otherwise, you'll be buried within hundreds and hundreds of different messages here. Okay, next point is, let's go with Peter this time. So, out of all the new feature, I know you've done a video already about the 20 things that you like about the new OM-1. Tell me the 3 favorite thing that you found in the OM-1. Oops, your audio's gone again, Peter.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you now. Yes.
All right, that's good. That's really good. So you want to hear the three?
Yeah, the most important, or the most important discovery, or the 3 things that you like the most on the OM-1.
Oh, okay. The first thing is that the 4K 60 frames per second is something that I really use a lot, and that's something that I really need. And then, of course, the AF and the subject recognition system, or the algorithm, is really something that I enjoy. It's not something that I need in my professional work that much, but it's nice to go out and photograph some wildlife just for fun, and it works. It makes it so much easier, so it's a lot more fun. You don't struggle. It's hard enough to find the animals and the birds and get them into the frame, but then I don't have to worry about the AF and stuff like that. So I think those are the ones that I enjoy the most. But like I said, there are many things.
Okay, right, cool. What about you, Rob?
Well, I would say the animal detector, the subject detect autofocus is my favorite thing right now. And like I said, it's just enabled me to go out and feel a little more confident when I'm going to try and do that kind of photography. And it's something I definitely want to explore. That's my number one by far. And then like I said, I didn't give the EVF and screen much credit, but I really like that now.
Yeah.
That's been I don't know, like I said, it's about the user experience. When you're taking pictures, it really amplifies that and makes it much more enjoyable. And then the other thing is the video features and all of the different things. Now that we have 4K 60, and then we have the 240 FPS in full HD. I did a little experimenting with that this morning, and it's given me a lot more possibilities for B-roll and things like that for my personal vlogging. And and I went to a family event yesterday where we did some golfing, and I was able to use the 240 frame per second slow-mo them as they're swinging and missing the ball, which was awesome. So yeah, those 3 things I really enjoy the most.
Okay, cool. For me, and it's definitely, first, I already mentioned that EVF is my top thing, because I do use it basically. I mean, as a photographer who uses this camera a lot, and that's really is the window. So having that thing is, to me, is the top priority. So that thing changes everything that I do, in a way. The secondly will be the video. 4K 60 is really cool, but I think I would put the 10-bit as my priority, because I don't know if actually explore, because I use the the EM1 series to film for many years now, and so I already know the limitation of the cameras, but in terms of the quality between 8-bit and 10-bit is significant. And I also have the Atomos Ninja 5 as well, so I can actually record externally with 12-bit. So obviously that's another step forward if you want to like the top quality. But the thing is, of the OM1, the EM1X and the EM1 Mark III, you can already record raw video through the Atomos Ninja 5 anyway. So already getting 12-bit. So this is not new. And but the internal 10-bit changes many things in terms of tonalities, and it does really retain a lot of the information that that we're missing with the older cameras. That I found that because I often shoot in very high contrast situations, and whereby a lot of the blacks or the white will be clipped and fairly easily with the old 8-bit. But now with the 10-bit, it does retain a lot of the details in between. So like even with the from the dark to bright area, it's a lot smoother now. It's definitely it looks kind of different, but in a good way. Quite hard to explain it, but you know, you probably see a few short videos that I'm gonna make in the near future through the channel, and you will definitely see the differences. And I'll definitely be making some sort of comparison between the 8-bit and the 10-bit. So that's good. And also the files is no longer chopped into little pieces, and then now we can have one big long file. That's
Yes.
that is something that I really been screaming before, and yeah, it's annoying having like chopped up files, and so when you're coming to editing, you know, you just have to keep pulling them back in bit by bit, and then it's hard to keep track of them as well, because you might end up with, I don't know, 60, 70 different files, but now you can have 10, 15 long files, but you know which section you're actually filming, and it's just a lot easier to organize, a lot easier to work with. So to me, that aspect of it for my workflow is a lot better, a lot more usable, a lot more workable. So that is really good. That is fantastic. So that's good to hear. Everybody got slightly different perspective, but don't forget it. We're all three different photographers, different creators, so we do different things. So different things appeal to us differently. So that's why, like, you know, it's really hard sometimes for anyone to listen to just one reviewers, because they may have their own preference, and it's always good to check out all our channels whenever we do our videos. Just check out every single one of ours, and so just so you can feel about different perspective, you know, where we're coming from, and why we talk about certain things and not the others. Simply because, you know, I have different priorities, and so is Rob, so is Peter, and it's also always good to have, you know, people who actually work in the field using the same system, so you can actually get a sense of how we get the most out of all these cameras that we have used here. And you're here because you either love Olympus, or you're already using Olympus systems, OM systems, and you want to get the best out of your system. And it's good to have, you know, three big guys here. Obviously Robin will be here, but today unfortunately we're talking about only OM-1, so you will see Robin in my future interview, so don't worry about it, he's gonna be here. Okay, so I'm actually highlighting some questions at the moment while we're going along, and so the next thing is about the OM-1, right? Okay, this is more questions that I actually gathered in the last couple of weeks, and I just want to see how you feel about these particular questions from the public about the OM-1. First of all, and there are people questioning about the OM-1 durability, and some say, because obviously we all have the cameras now, we can certainly share our experience about it. Some actually say that the OM-1 is built less sturdy compared to the EM1 Mark III. And so Rob is knocking the camera. Rob, share your view. What do you think about it?
Well, you know, a lot of my viewers know I drop my cameras all the time, but I haven't dropped this one or my EM1 Mark III. I don't see really any difference in the build quality at all when I'm handling it. It feels solid. If I didn't look at the name on the front, I wouldn't know which camera was which. And it does have a higher weather sealing rating, so that would imply that it's going to be more durable in the long run as well. So yeah, I haven't heard anything like that, and I've never, and you know, I go through the forums like everyone else, and I haven't seen anyone say anything about the durability of the camera.
Right. What about you, Peter?
Well, I think it's built totally fine. There's no problem. It's feels a bit different. The what do you call, the surface is a bit different, but otherwise, you know, it's as good as it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I too agree. In fact, the OM-1, if you look at the spec, is actually slightly heavier than the EM-1 Mark III, and I actually do feel the grip, entire grip area here, it feels different. I think it's all because of this. I don't know if you can see that, the actual leatherette covering by the memory card slot, and because before in the EM-1 Mark II and Mark III, it's shiny. It's basically a hard plastic piece here. So now you actually get the full. I don't know how to describe it. It just makes it more secure when you hold it. But overall, I mean, I've been using it almost extensively for the last 3 weeks now, and I feel it's basically another Olympus cameras, and it feels that way. It doesn't make any difference. I don't think it's less sturdy in any way, and in fact, it's been great since the EM-1X, to be honest. And I would say the EM-1 Mark II is definitely not as sturdy as could be, but the EM-1X, EM-1 Mark III has completely changed that, and especially X is built like a tank. But I think from my experience, because I have all the cameras here, and then the OM-1 feels very much like an EM-1X, and then so that's a testament to it, because EM-1X is built supposed to be the top end professional camera that can withstand, you know, a war zone, you know, that kind of thing. So like the OM-1 certainly feels that way. I know there are people who questioning about the buttons and the modals, not the modals. This bit here. How would you call this? The drive button. Oh, there you go. This bit here. And then people were saying that it feels a bit spongy, and also because it's concave now, it's really hard to press, and if you are wearing gloves and things like that. And it's still winter time in the UK, and I mean, I've been wearing gloves using the camera for the last 2 weeks, and I don't feel any difficulty pressing any of the buttons. Sponginess, I think it's a more personal thing. You know, I think that it's probably spongy on the EM-1X as well, and it's definitely not clicky in a way. It's all because I think it's the weather sealed around these buttons that makes it, that feeling is more than anything else. That's my take on it anyway. Okay, let's move on to the next part, and it's about speed, right? I know none of us are speed shooters. We don't do 50 frames per second, 100 frames per second, and but generally, I think you kind of mentioned that in the first impression anyway. But do you think the speed, overall operational speed, AF speed, anything to do with speed in the OM-1, kind of helps you in your photography?
Oh, me?
Well, let's go with Peter first. Let's go with Peter first.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to nominate someone.
Yeah, it is a lot faster, and it helps a lot because when everything works faster, you know, it's just easier to do everything. You don't have to wait anything. Like the high handheld race shot, it's bang and it's done. And I haven't really used the focus stacking yet, but I presume that's faster too. But yeah, everything works so much faster, and that's the beauty of the camera, because the other ones, they went slow, but if you use the computational stuff, then it was a bit slower. But now it's like handheld high-res shot. You just like, it's just done. You don't even realize that you took a handheld high-res shot. It's a hard word to say.
Yeah. I mean, I only just found out, you know, the short form is it HHHR, is it high res shot?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, some I don't know. I mean, I've been reading people like when they type in what is HHHR. I can't even speak it. Okay, Rob, what about you?
Yeah, well, you know, I've never really used the M1 Mark III as a high-speed type camera. You know, it's always been my workhorse for my real estate architectural type stuff. I'm on a tripod and I'm using the live view. I'm not even using the EVF. And I program everything in the custom modes, and that's how I worked. So moving to the OM-1, you know, it's hard for me to appreciate any improvements in speed because I never really worked fast with the M1 Mark III. But I will say, like Peter, the handheld high-res shot, I have used time to time on my EM5 and EM1 Mark II, and being able to just kind of get out of that in 5 or 6 seconds instead of like 15 seconds is a big deal because when you're doing shots, particularly even if you're just doing landscape shots, the light changes so quickly that that extra 7 to 10 seconds per shot as you're going through the evening can make a big difference when you're working in high res. Because like I said, the light changes so quickly, and that's something I noticed. Actually, I just went out this morning, and the light just changed very quickly, and I was thinking to myself, wow, I can get a lot more done now because the computational stuff is faster. So that's something that's another thing that I'll appreciate more as time goes on. But initially, my only experience was this morning when I realized the light was changing so quickly and I didn't have to wait so long for the high res shot mode. And that was really nice.
Cool, cool. I mean, I think I'm probably similar to what Peter said. However, and I do use CAF a lot in my portrait shoots, and because of candid stuff, I just want to. Sometimes I just want my subject to be natural, so I basically ask them to move away from me, and I'll just simply use a 40 to 150 actually shot at distance from them. So I just want to let them be themselves and let them play. And CAF at that sort of time is actually very helpful, and because I don't have to wait, I just basically keep tracking them, and especially sometimes with kids in the family, they could be running around. So CAF is really, really helpful. The speed in the on the OM-1, I have done 2 family shoots in the last 2 weeks, and both of them have kids. I can tell you that the speed is very different. When I say that, is how fast that you can actually acquire the subject and reacquire it if I lose it, and that is actually very significant because I use because like I said, I shoot a CAF in these sort of scenarios. I can really directly compare with my experience on the EM1 Mark III and also before that the EM1X, and the speed of reacquiring the subject, especially when you enable the face detection, and is quick. And the OM1 is very quick on doing that. And the good thing is also it sticks on it. It doesn't really lose focus that much. And the only time you lose the focus is when I set the focus group to be smaller than it is. Rather than using full frame, I just a full scene, and 100% frame. I just basically use a 5x5, and then it's very small in the middle, and so when the subjects go outside of that box, it wouldn't track it, and then that's the time when I lose it. But as soon as I move the camera back, and then when the subject fall back into that frame there, the speed of reacquiring the focus is so much faster than the EM1 Mark III, and that I can tell you that. So that to me, as a workhorse, that is good. That is significant, and that means I can now relying on the camera more than ever, which is a good thing in a way, because you have to trust your gear when you do your job, and then you don't want to fiddle around with the settings too often, because you lose the moments if you do that, especially when you do sort of like a moment shot for work. Okay, the next thing is going to be big. That's going to be big, right? Be prepared, gentlemen. Okay. There are 2 questions there, obviously, and also something that I gathered over the last couple of weeks since the OM-1 launch. First of all, is resolution, and so obviously there are debate on whether OM systems should go higher, or 20 is still enough in 2022. And so let's go with Rob first. Oh, Rob, your audio's gone.
All right, I mute so I could type without bothering. But
Right.
yeah, 20 megapixels is certainly enough for me. And I've had a chance to shoot with like high resolution cameras, 45 megapixels and such, and I compared it side by side actually with my Pen F. And when you actually pixel peep things, it's not that much different, and when there is a difference, who looks at things at 400%, right? I think if you're doing sort of product photography where you're focusing in, the subject's very close to you, maybe a meter, 3 feet away, having the high res the higher resolution, 45, 60, whatever megapixels is nice, but that's why we have handheld we have high res shot mode on the M1 OM-1 now. It sort of makes up for that. When you start talking about megapixels in terms of distance, right? You start getting atmospheric type distortion, and then, you know, the lens being able to resolve things at a distance is also a problem. And that's when I found that having a higher resolution camera really makes no difference. You know, landscapes and things like that. In my limited experience, I have to qualify that a little bit. But I do see a difference when I am shooting things that are only 3 feet or a meter away. Yeah, resolution can be a big deal. But since we have high-res shot mode on the camera, that sort of eliminates that one thing, right? At least for me, for the kind of photography I do. So when I do, I rarely do close-up shots, but I have been adding some high-res shots to my architectural type photography because I'm working in a room that's maybe 3-4 meters and, you know, around, right? Maybe 100, 200 square feet. I do get better images when I use the high-res shot mode. But for everyday kind of photography, you know, like I said, going from 20 megapixels to 25, like the GH6 did, you're not going to see a difference. Going from 20 to 45 megapixels in a lot of landscape type photography, and I'm talking about things that are maybe, I'm not talking about like mountains and things like that, but even just a meadow or field, it's not that big a deal. The only time you can really see the extra pixels are when you're shooting, say, a portrait close up and you pixel peep on the eye and you can see the eyelashes. But nobody does that for real, you know? And the times that it does come in handy,
They
like
do.
product photography, you know,
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
that's when
I
it,
guess it really depends on the applications at the end of the day.
yeah.
And to be quite frank, you know, funny you mentioned that because just take a few step back, you know, back in the analog days, you know, when we don't have a choice about resolutions because we just shoot as film as a format, right? You know, we just shoot as format. It's 135, 120, and then any other format, so you can name it, you know, large formats in a 10x5, you know, whatever. And so we don't have a choice. You know, like you know, if you shoot 35, you know what you're going to expect, right? And how big you're going to print. And now you know, when we come to format, you start to talk about pixels and start to talk about resolutions and this and that. And also, like, there are different resolutions within a format. It's going to complicate a lot of things. But what people don't realize is that where, you know, what is your ultimate, the end output for your photos, you know, your image file. Are you going to print it? Are you going to just simply process it and just view it on an iPad or phone, or maybe just on the computer screen as a background? And you have to evaluate that sort of like what are you going to use the files for at the end of the day? Are you going to sell it? And it's tricky, you know, and people don't realize, you know, resolution doesn't mean everything, which because a lot of people nowadays put it in it's like a top priorities. You know, the more megapixels is better because it's got more details. I mean, technically that's correct. You know, the more megapixel, obviously you're going to get more details, and but at the end, but also at the same time, you're gonna have to be very careful when you shoot ultra high resolution because. Well, we always have a saying, you know, if you are using a very sharp or detailed sensor, you have to be very careful about movement of your camera movements. And so, like, the higher the resolution, the less forgiving for any sort of human error especially shooting photographs. And so you have to be really careful about what you're doing because you will see those movements when you start doing pixel peeping, and then you will see those blurs everywhere. And you know, I personally experienced it when I first started with 12 megapixel digital cameras and moved up to 16, then 18, then 24, and back down to 20. So, you know, I've seen all this stuff, and I have used other people's 45, 100 megapixel cameras as well. You know, and you do need to handle it properly and train yourself to work with those resolutions before you can confidently say that I can work with those kind of resolutions. Otherwise, you know, people are going to start looking at them closely. But Peter, what about you? What do you think about 20 megapixels?
Well, that's plenty for me, at least. I don't really need anything more. But of course, I can understand from the marketing point of view that some of you guys over there might want to have 24 or a bit more. I started with digital cameras. They had about 6 million pixels, and I was all good to go and sold those images, and nobody really what's the word, was not happy about the images. So I don't think that's not the thing. But I can understand the claim, because it's always a race about numbers, and they might, or some people might think that it is something that they actually need. But for me, 20 is just enough. And if I need, then I can use the HHHR or whatever that is called, or the numbers, or not the numbers, but the letters are. So there is always that possibility. So I think it's.
Yeah, and also I think you all probably would agree with me, because all three of us are professional. We do make money from photography, and any increase in resolutions can have a huge impact into our back-end system. Like the way we have to process them, the speed we can process them, the storage we have to store these files, and all sorts of stuff. It's something that with all due respect, like something that amateurs may not actually appreciate, because you don't shoot like thousands of photos, per week. You don't do that. You don't do 150,000 photos per year. You don't have this sort of quantity to deal with. While we professionals would deal with it every day, and then any even increase of 2 megapixels, and has a huge impact on the speed that we're doing things and churning out photo, turning around, exporting photos, and so forth. And these sort of things, it costs us actually, because time is money in professional photography terms. So 20 actually hit the sweet spot. And I remember years ago, I think it was 5 to 6 years ago now, people did ask me about that question. And then that's the time when people are breaking the barrier of 24 megapixel, when they're starting to go with 30, 35, and so forth. And there are people asking me, why don't you just upgrade or change system to have something high resolution? I said, no, but I don't need it. All my clients are completely happy with what I do. And in fact, I over-deliver, because their requirement were 12 megapixels. And then even in video terms, I could shoot 4K, but all the video spec that I receive from my commercial client, the people who pay me to do it, they were asking for 720 and 1080. No one asked for 4K. So like this is the difference. As a professional, I guess, and I have to deliver what they ask for. I mean, I can over deliver them, but what's the point of it? And so far, I mean, I don't think that I would need to have anything. I mean, the only time that I would perhaps consider upping my megapixel game or get a high resolution cameras would be the time when the customer's starting to complain. They'll start asking me about more megapixels and stuff like that. But in reality, and I don't think that will happen, and that won't happen for many, many more years, simply because if you look at the end customers, what they're going to use those files for, even in commercial terms, unless we were talking about billboard stuff, and but those are printing, and but if you look at most of these things that we're doing now on the internet, website, commercial website, people with these big companies, they don't need 45 megapixel image file for the website. It's all compressed. You're not going to have any sort of screen with that sort of resolution to display pixel to pixel on screen for 45 megapixels. No one can do that. Like, if you look at it, like the screen size here, 4K, you only need 8 megapixel. You only need 30 megapixel for 8K videos. Like you can imagine 45 is definitely way over the top for anything to display on the web. And then so like none of these commercial companies would require anything bigger than 8 megapixel most of the time. And then they might do cropping. If they do, 12, 16 is already more than enough for them to crop. So you have to kind of imagine and start to think about a lot of things. And this is the whole point about the end user's needs, and also how you want to use your photographs at the end of the day, and whether you do need more. So I guess the question will always going to be go back to you, whoever asked the question, do you need more than 20? And if you do, and I think that then you can probably have to look at other systems there, but I think 20 is definitely way more than most of us would ever need for many, many, many more years. Now let's come to the next big
Let me
question.
just add something, Jimmy, to what you said.
Sure.
Definitely the workflow is much better at 20 megapixels than it would be at 45 or 60.
Yep.
And also in terms of my clients, I deliver everything in 2 megapixels. Just so you know.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
And I've never had
Uh,
a complaint because it's the quality of the image that matters, not the megapixels.
Exactly. I mean, so many times the people. I mean, I work with art directors and creative directors, and you know, a lot of the time they basically talk to me, and you know, I just want to see, you know, the message from the photograph that you create. You know, there's nothing about resolution because to them, you know, they just want to see that and then happening, and they have a minimum requirements, but usually like 4 to 8 megapixel. That's the requirement that they actually give me to produce that particular image, and so like. It's just something that you have to ask yourself whether it's too much, whether it's too like just too little. You just need more for the sake of you just need to see more. I know people have an argument also about cropping. You know, I do understand that. You know, you don't have if you don't have that super tele lens, you know, like the 150 to 400, and if you want to get close to that deer while you're still quite far away, yeah, if you have a high resolution camera, yeah, maybe you can crop in and just have to simulate it. Kind of zoom in a way, and so you can get close to the subject. But those are isolated incidents, and then that you may not need. That if you're too far away, that means you may actually want to get a little bit closer, for instance, unless it's physically impossible. That's always what photography is all about. You know, you need to get a little bit closer to the subject if you're not close enough. But obviously, other cases can be different, like birds, for instance, that you might need that's why they all need longer lenses, because the birds are quite far away. It's quite hard to photograph them, birds in flight, so forth. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. Let's do the next big question. This is a big one, and we have seen so many. I have to repeat it again. So many debates online since the OM-1 has came out. There are also so many tests and comparisons that has been released over the last couple of weeks about the image quality on the OM-1. And obviously we all can share our own experience about the files that we work with. And but there are people who are talking about the image quality is just not good enough. It's not the next generation image quality. Is very much the same as the EM1 Mark III. There's no improvement there. So I want to hear about, you know, from you know, you, Peter, and Rob, and of course I'll share my view as well about how I see the files. Do you think it's an improvement? Do you think that it is better, or it is about the same as the EM1 Mark III? So let's start with Peter.
Well, if you take images with EM1 Mark III and side by side with the OM-1, you don't really see that much of a difference. But if you start opening up the shadows, the OM-1 image holds a lot better. The colors stay the same, and the image quality is a lot better. But that's kind of funny. If you just compare them side by side, you don't really see that much difference. But when you start opening it up and editing the image, there's a huge difference. And then, of course, if you use the OM Workspace new noise AI, it will give you a lot better results. And with both cameras, with older cameras that are supported in that noise AI reduction thing. But I'd say that it is better.
Right. And what about you, Rob?
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you're shooting, I'll just reiterate basically what Peter said. When you're shooting everything at normal exposures and you capture the exposure that you want initially, yeah, it's very hard to tell, all the way up to even 25,600. But it's when you start pushing the files. And, you know, I did a whole series of images where I underexposed by 3 stops, underexposed by 5 stops, then pushed them back to normal. I also overexposed by 3 and 5 stops, and I brought them back down. And you're definitely, the biggest improvement, particularly when you get to ISO 1600 and 3200 and higher, the biggest improvement is definitely in the color. The color turns to total, it's a complete mess on the M1 Mark III when you're at like 3200 and you're pushing at 5 stops. But on the OM1, most of the colors are still accurate, are still there. Slight magenta tint, you know, it's more Nikonish now in color science, but Uh, and with that better color, you see more detail and you get a much more pleasing image. So it's definitely in the pushing and pulling of the files that you see the difference. It's more significant on the shadow end than on the highlight end, but you can still see it on the highlight end. And I've published a bunch of stuff on my Flickr page if you want to pixel peep the side by sides of that. But definitely there's an image improvement. I'm still doing more testing on a bunch of other stuff, but my initial impressions are they definitely made some improvements in how flexible the files are in post-processing.
Right. Yep. And that's good to hear. I completely agree with both Peter and Rob. And like I said, I have already started using the OM-1 for my pro shoots, and I have been working with the file extensively for the last couple of weeks, and I can definitely echo that. It's definitely, I would say, the files are more flexible, and you can massage the file a little bit better than the EM1 Mark III. The shadow area, the dark area are definitely a significant improvement there, especially when you're shooting high contrast scenes, when you're trying to, let's say, if you want to expose to the left, by trying to keep the highlight from clipping, you want to boost the shadow later in post-production, you can now do so very, very easily. And also, you can actually see the details a lot better than the older EM1 Mark III. For instance, if Topaz and DxO gonna start extending the compatibility on the OM1, you are going to basically get a really nicer files compared to EM1 Mark III. That's for sure, because the detail retention on the OM1 is definitely better in any ISO levels. The color is definitely also important as well, because in the older EM1 Mark III, when you go ISO 800, if you start really pushing the shadow, you're gonna start losing colors. You find that a lot of the color noise starting to creep into the shadow area. You have to do a lot of noise reduction trying to remove them, and by doing so, you're gonna start introducing some sort of color tints in those areas. You have to kind of do localization to bring those color casts back down to the normal level. So it's a lot of work you need to do to kind of get that file into the quality that you like to present to your client. But the OM1 is definitely had that advantage by means of keeping the neutral colors or the original colors in the shadow area when you push it. And also, when in a high ISO, you definitely get less banding. That's very important as well, because
Yes.
if you start pushing the shadow a lot in high ISO settings, you are gonna start see bandings on the EM1 Mark III and the EM1X files. The OM1 is definitely got way less banding, and even if there is a little bit of it, it's very easy to fix. So that way, I think, to me, is a big improvement. But like all you said, if you just expose a photograph normally, if you do a normal exposure, you won't see the difference, and you really have to
if it's
start
okay,
working
let
with the
me.
files.
Yeah, can I share just this one screen? I think it demonstrates what we're talking about.
Yep. Let me see how I'm gonna do that. Right. Let me just give you a new screen. Just 1 second, and let me
Okay.
just gonna add one out. So I'm gonna get you in here, and there you go. Can I minus me out? Even though I'm gonna do that. Okay, guest screen. Oh, okay, guest screen. Okay, guest screen. There you go. Is it your screen?
Yep, you need to make that one full screen.
Right. I need to see how I'm gonna do that. Minus me out. There you go.
Okay, but this is the M1 Mark III on the left and the OM1 on the right, and this is at ISO 3200. And I pushed the two files on the. Whoops, I'm sorry. I pushed these two files 3 stops, and I pushed these two files 5 stops. So what I did is I underexposed by 5 stops, then I just slid the slider up 5 stops in Lightroom. And you can see a huge difference here, especially at 5 stops. And that's just at ISO 3200. And as we go higher to 6400, 25,000, this difference is even bigger. As you can see the horrible green color cast, and if I really punch in, you can see banding here
Yeah.
in the shadows. Whereas if I go over here, there's no banding. There's noise, but there's no banding. So they really did an excellent job. And then backing off, you can see definitely how the OM-1 is retain the colors much, much better, and you're going to have a lot easier time in post. These are extreme examples, of course.
Yep.
But I just wanted to show you visibly the difference, what we're talking about. And that's
Sure.
all.
I think that is definitely something that I can concur with that, because I did a similar test in one of my videos already about looking at the older, looking at high ISO files, and I didn't really do an extensive test. That was almost like my first impression, because at the time when I did the video, there were limited support from softwares, and now we know that the OM-1 is slowly getting supported by many softwares now, and obviously the one that I want to see is DxO's and Topaz, and I want to see both of these guys have the compatibility added to the catalog, so I can see how well they can resolve these details and stuff like that. Because I know both of them are really impressive, in terms of getting rid of noise and also at the same time improving the image quality, and particularly for DxO is because they spit out, they clean the noise from the image, and they spit out a DNG file, so that you can actually further process it with a clean file. So I think that is actually very, very good there. So I'm waiting for all these companies to have the OM-1 supported, and then I think I'll be over the moon once they have that, and then I'll be able to fully test it, and to see exactly how good the OM-1 file is in a professional environment, especially in a very demanding environment, stuff that I do day in, day out. So that is very good. But it's good to hear that you both like the files, and I think that for most people who just ordered the OM-1 or already had it, you probably will agree with us. And once you start massaging the files and starting to push and pull the file, then you're starting to realize and the new flexibility that added to the OM-1 raw files. And it's funny enough, if you go to DP Review, you can actually see that they recently pumped out a test comparison video, image comparison and library, including the OM-1 and compare it to the Mark III and also the Sony, I think 6400, 6600, and also the other camera, I can't remember now. And if you look, forget about the Sony and the other camera, just look at between the OM-1 and the EM-1 Mark III, you will notice that the OM-1 raw file, even though that both OM-1 and EM-1 Mark III are same at 20 megapixels, but the raw file on the OM-1 is actually a little bit larger consistently throughout the entire ISO range. So what does that tell us? For a slightly bigger file, is that information's inside, because remember, these are data in the file. The bigger the number, the more data it is. That means there's more information in this particular file. So the OM-1 file have actually more information contained within it compared to the EM-1 Mark III. And I think that reflects on what we just talked about. The improved color retention and the improved details being kept within the shadow areas, and these are information in the files. And slightly bigger file means that there are definitely something more in it. And so I think that this is something that I think you, over time, when you start using the camera, when you start processing it, when you start pushing it, then you start realize exactly what they are, and then what they mean to you as a photographer, and how much you can produce from these files. And I think that's probably what we would like to kind of summarize for what the OM-1 image quality is, because I know there are a lot of debates and a lot of people have been studying different graphs and numbers, and but at the end of the day, those numbers can potentially mean nothing, because unless you're starting to work with file, you just simply do not know exactly what what you're doing with them, or how much you're missing. And the only thing, like I always say, whether it's files or not, whether it's camera or lenses, the best thing is to try it. Then you know. If it's not suitable for you, that's not suitable for you. I'm not trying to force you or selling you Olympus or whatever. It's definitely not that. But I don't want people like trying to make judgment before they really trying the files, trying the cameras or lenses, and start to make assumptions and decisions on saying this is the bad product, this is something bad. I mean, and no one knows. I mean, I don't know what Sony does. I mean, until I try the files, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't say Canon is bad cameras. I would never say that, because I haven't tried the cameras, right? So this is the only thing I want to say about Micro Four Thirds in general, anyway, because people always have the perceptions that with smaller sensors, it's not going to be great enough to do professional work. As you can see, the three of us are professional. We're making money from photography using Micro Four Thirds gear. That's okay, and there's no one say that Micro Four Thirds is not pro. and it's definitely enough for, I would say, 99.9% of photographers in the world, to be honest. And this is whether you can appreciate the portability side of it or the quality side of it. Okay, so I guess we have talked enough about the OM-1. I have highlighted some questions, and there are about 13 of them, so we can start answering it. But before we do that, I don't know if you guys want to take a small 5 minutes break. And if you do, we can go and grab a coffee, grab a cup of water, whatever. And you guys, if you can continue want ask questions, you're very welcome to do so. Remember to put Red 35 in the comment section, so your question is highlighted, so it's easier for me to see those questions and get one of our experts here to answer the questions. Also, at the same time, I want to remind you guys that I have set up a charity page and a donation page to the Ukrainian people and people who needs humanitarian aid, that you know what's going on at the moment. So it's completely no obligations there. It's only entirely up to you if you want to help them, help these people. I have a link in the video description, so you can go out there and just give some donation for these people. It's going to directly to British Red Cross, and these funds will go directly to whoever needs them. So hopefully that we can raise some money today, and it's all for good cause, of course. And yeah, just hope that horrible things won't happen again, and then hopefully this situation will be resolved as soon as possible. Okay, right, let me just wait for Rob to come back, and we can start looking at some of your questions. But in the meantime, and Rob is having this really cool face on. Let's keep Rob. Oh, Rob is back. So I guess we are all ready. I thought you were going to keep your cool face on for a while, and then
I did that for the Peter Fosgard 52-week assignment.
Oh right, I thought
that's a cool shot. It's a cool shot.
I thought it was one of your like a rock and roll album cover. It certainly looks like one. Or you needed just a guitar and some sort of tattoos on your arms and stuff.
Maybe a scar.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, right. I got some questions here, and please continue to ask if you want. And let's go to the questions now. And let me see if there's any new one here. Might as well get them in. Okay, I can see some now. Yeah, if you want your comment to be highlighted, you need to put @ signs there at the bit before Red 35, then I'll see your comment. Okay, I'll highlight some more. Right. Okay, first of all, from Todd M. How is the ND filter, and does it work? Let me just bring it in. And right. Okay, how is the ND filter, and does it work similar to a real one? So you talk about the live ND. Is there any oddity in it and your impression, please? So anyone would like to chip in?
Yeah, I'll chip in on this one because I did that. I did some shots this morning using the live ND and using a real ND filter and compared them side by side. And I can tell you that the live ND has a much gives you a lot of advantages. One is you can do it handheld. If you're very steady, you can do it handheld. With a screw-on filter ND, you got to be on a tripod because you're doing a long exposure. But I was able to do it handheld, and the other main thing is some of the cheaper ND filters give you sort of an X pattern or shading, and they also can do color cast and tint onto the image. The digital live ND built into the camera has none of those issues. So having a 5 or it's a 6-stop now, digital live ND in the camera, you eliminate a lot of problems you have when you're actually using a physical ND. And and it's one less thing to carry, break, drop, lose, etc. One less thing you have to clean. So there's a lot of advantages there. But I did compare them side by side, and I used a semi good quality ND filter. It's not the cheapest one you can get, not the most expensive, and I got very, very similar results. But like I said, a digital ND filter that the OM-1 has, especially going to 6 stops now, that extra stop is a big deal. really gives you those advantages of not worrying about any kind of weird shading and weird color casts when you use a regular ND. And you don't lose any quality because you're not putting anything in front of the lens. Because I also noticed that because ND filters, real ND filters, they have two lenses in them that you twist, to get different. If you're using a variable ND, it can take a little bit of an edge off on the sharpness as well, and you don't have any of those issues with the
Yep,
live
that's
ND.
true.
So I think it's better.
Okay, and what about you, Peter?
Yeah, it is. It is a lot better because then you also have the ND filters all the time with you. It doesn't matter what filter thread you have on your lens, and the results are identical. So it's totally one of the best things. And like Rob said, that you can do really long exposures handheld. So, and as I said, the results are exactly identical.
Cool. Yep, and I personally don't use extreme live ND a lot, but I do use live ND for creative purposes when I shoot portrait. I mean, I demonstrated some of those photos in my last stream, and it's definitely very, very cool. But I guess, there are a couple of plus points there, and obviously, Rob, you already mentioned it, the color cast and also sharpness of the photos, because when you add another layer of glass in front of your lens, you are potentially decreasing the image quality. If you got a cheap filter, for instance, and it just goes things another thing, because you could reflect within the elements, and then you will start seeing a lot of defects and in your photograph that you may not be able to correct in post afterward. And so this is something you have to bear that in mind. So having a digital ND filter, in a way, really kind of eliminate all those potential risks of damaging the photographs. But I think that it really depends on the usage, and because I have used a long exposure. I have a lot of 10 stops filters here to do extreme long exposure shots. I think that depending on what sort of durations you're talking about, and what sort of movement you're trying to retain in the photograph, and I find that for instance, if you want to do seascape photos, you want to have some sort of fine art look, having this really ultra long exposure, make this sea very smooth and creamy kind of thing. And I think the digital ND filters still have a little bit of disadvantage compared to the real ND in that sort of scenarios. I'm not about, these are isolated cases, but in general, if you want to just capture like waterfall or light trail in the city, those are perfectly okay. Those are actually really, really good. And but something is just need that extra bit of quality. I think you may still want to use the proper physical ND filter in that case. And but that's only my own personal experience. And I do use live ND. Don't get me wrong, because I use it for other purposes. And but for something that if I want to create something really fine art look, the very smooth, creamy look in terms of long exposure wise, and I will still employ my 10 stop filters for that matter, and compared to using just digital ND. So that's only my take on it. Okay,
let me add two more things.
Yep, go on.
One is when you a lot of times when you put an ND filter on, whether it's a variable or a fixed ND, you have to take your lens hood off. You get glare sometimes.
Oh yes.
The other thing is,
yeah,
the ND, the digital ND only works in photo mode, not video mode. So you still need a real ND filter if you need it for video purposes. So get a quality one in that case. That's all.
No, that's absolutely fine. And just one second, I think someone just told me that my my Red Cross link is not active or missing. Let me just double check on my link. But in the meantime, let's go to the next question. So while trying to get that fixed, and you can answer those questions. So let's look at the next one here. And okay, found it. So on the let me just bring that in. Sorry, let me just change that to this question here. The OM-1 Mark III, I use button shortcut for boost view by using flash. On the OM-1, didn't find that option. Only some night LV live view. Did I miss somehow the option? Has anyone got to that far yet? I don't think I've tried the option yet.
Well, it's just the word or the term has changed. It's about the same thing, but they have put it to a different place, and it works a bit differently, but it's basically the same thing.
Right, basically the same thing. So hopefully that answers your questions. And let's go to the next one. Right, Anastas. Everyone is talking about the Meg MPs, but no one is talking about ratio. The 2:3 ratio on the other cameras is awful. For vertical portrait, 4:3 is much nicer. I think that's pretty subjective. And we crop out images every now and then. Sometimes I use 1:1, as a square. Sometimes 4:3 is quite nice as a portrait orientation. But when you do it as a landscape orientation for group portrait or something with some sort of backdrop, I actually do like 2:3. So it's kind of really hard to say which one is better or not. And but for me, I actually quite like the 2:3 format. It's probably how I brought up with anyway in 35mm because they're all 2:3 anyway. But 4:3 I do use a lot for portrait orientation, just like exactly what you said there. I do agree with that. Wayne, I exposed to the right on my EM1X. Would it be a good idea to set up the OM-1 the same? I think we kind of mentioned that, but Peter, do you share your view?
Oh yes,
yes.
Definitely. That's the right way to do it.
Right. Okay. And what about you, Peter? Sorry, Rob.
I'm sorry, I was typing here. Exposed to the right on the M1X, would it be a good idea? Yeah, it'd be exactly the same.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to expose to, I don't normally expose to the right. I just bracket the shots and then do an HDR and post.
Right.
That's what I would do instead of exposing to the right. If you have to expose to the right, you're compromising. If for some reason you need to capture in a single image, yeah, then you would set it up the same.
Okay, guys, I got my page link gonna be coming back up in a minute, so I'm just gonna do this. I'm copying the link over. So if you got a chance, and please do support my charity page to help the Ukrainian people for the humanitarian aid. So that would be really awesome. So just 1 second while I'm trying to add the link back in, and just. Okay, right, I just saved it. Perfect, I saved it. So if you may have to refresh the page before you can actually see the link active in the description. So so you can do that after the stream or as whenever you want. So it's entirely up to you. So let's get back to our stream right now. So let me come back in. Good. Okay. Let's go to the next question. Cliff. Right. If one is going to publish books, how big do you need? My 20 megapixel looks stunning in self-publishing books and finite printing 13:17. Peter, Rob, do you print your photographs? And I think that I can totally agree that until you started printing, you don't really know exactly how many pixels you need. And to be honest, and my 20 megapixel has sold many times on albums, huge albums, and I print canvases for my clients. They are 50-inch canvases. They're big canvas, and printing is a very different thing altogether, and it's not something that is easy to understand. It's not pixel related in a way, and so you just basically need to understand exactly the relationship. Until you start printing, you really don't understand how everything works. Even an iPhone 12 megapixel file and from an iPhone, you can easily print an A3 without any problems. That gives you a perspective on how many megapixel you really need when it comes to printing. And this is why I always think obviously with all due respect, with all the megapixels are definitely oversold and it's been over marketed by means of bigger is better. And I certainly think that unless you're really into cropping or like digging into details, pixel peeping, that kind of thing, but those are really you can go so far, as far as I can tell. As an art, if you're into art, into the photography, these are something that you probably don't want to get into too much. You really want to look at it as a whole, as more on an artistic level, more the aesthetic, the overall presentation of the photograph, the storytelling side of it, the composition and lighting, more than punching into a pixel level, starting to analyze how sharp it is and things like that. Because at the end of the day, you are viewing a photograph as a whole, as a piece. You're not gonna like using magnifying glass. Even if you print them, you don't go up close and using magnifying glass and start to look at individual dots on the actual print paper. So like, you really have to understand that side of it and start to appreciate photography as photography rather than the technical, the really technical side of things. And because it can really becoming more like a distracting issue if you start doing that too much, and definitely a more self-destructive thing to do. And okay, let's go to the next question here. And okay, I nearly bought a OM-1 but chickened out and got the GX6. Does OM-1 has the same problem of raw images not being supported? I'll just answer this quickly, then we can move on. Well, just like what we said earlier, and because like any new cameras on the market when they first release, unfortunately, it takes a little bit of time before softwares are supported. All these new raw files, and even the Z9 is only been recently supported by some of the main editing software, so it will take some time, and but hopefully sooner than later, that's for sure. But I'm pretty sure that at the moment, I know Capture One, OM Workspace definitely, and Adobe it currently unofficially supported, which is kind of weird thing. And even though it reads the file, and have been using Adobe to edit my OM-1 files, but I got a message from OM Systems saying that apparently it's not officially supported. So that's a weird thing, because it does read the file, so potentially there'll be some improvement there as well. So we just don't know just yet, and so we shall see. Okay, and well, the camera seems to be gather a lot of interest. Any idea how many have been sold order? Anyone got any ideas? Millions, billions?
Yeah. Well, I can only speak to
No idea.
I can only speak to my local camera store, and B&H. My local camera store was sold out day one, and I don't know how many they actually got, but B&H, they got 100 in their first shipment, and now they got pre-orders for another 100 for their next two shipments. They're 100 each, and that makes 300. So it's possible they've pre-ordered, 400 are already sold out, just at that one store, and that's all unofficial, of course, but that's what I heard in terms of quantities. So they're selling out. You cannot find the OM-1 right now anywhere.
No, absolutely.
That I'm aware of. I checked all 4 camera stores in my area, plus Best Buy. Yeah, there's Best Buy actually didn't even carry it, but and B&H and Adorama all sold out, back order. Well, not sold out, back ordered, I should say.
Yeah. And same here. And in the UK, basically all sold out now, and you'd be hard to find anyone's actually have any in stock. I also have been told by OM System, the UK representative, saying that the initial batch is basically completely sold out, completely gone now. So you have to wait for second, maybe even third batch by now. So it is quite a popular camera for sure. And if you're trying to buy one now, you may actually have to wait a month, maybe even 2. But obviously depending on the region, depending on where you are, and who's the distributors and who ordering it. But as far as I know, it's a high demand camera, that's for sure. Okay, and let's go to the next one here. Okay. How is raw sharpness on the OM-1 and EM1 Mark II RAWs in Lightroom always very soft? And what sharpness setting do you use in Lightroom? Okay, let me get a little bit bigger. That can be multiple things here actually. Peter, would you like to share some lights on that one? You are muted. Peter, you're muted. Peter, you're muted. Uh-oh.
All right. I think
Yeah,
you
we
can hear me now. This is, oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, it depends, of course, a bit with raw converter use. And now we're talking about Lightroom, and there's no difference between OM-1 or EM1 Mark III. And the best possible the quality that you can get is if you use OM Workspace. That's just the best one. And what was going to say about the sharpness? Yeah, it's of course it's subjective what or how much you want to sharpen your images, because over sharpening is not good, and under sharpening of course is not good. So what I do is use the masking thing, and I only sharpen the edges. You can press it's I don't know which one it is, but you have the masking tool or the masking slider, which you can check out, and then you can see that you're only sharpening the edges, and that's usually the best way to do. You don't want to sharpen the sky, for example. You just want to sharpen the hard edges, and I think it's the best way.
Yep. And what about Rob? Do you have any ideas? Any lights?
Yeah, well, I found in my photos, I tend to slide, like he was asking for a number. I slide up to about 100, 122, and then I apply some masking, so I just get the edges for landscapes and things. For like birds and other subjects, I'm much less aggressive, because then you start to see the artifacts and the very fine feathers. So the finer the details in the image, the less you're going to do the sharpening.
Yeah.
Because then you start to see the artifacts. So again, it's very subjective.
Can I say one thing?
Masking, like Peter
can I say one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the other way, of course, is to use the texture slider. That will sharpen the texture. So that's also something that you could do. And now that it has the masking tool, which is the new AI masking tool. So what I usually do is I select the subject, and then I select everything else and treat a bit differently and sharpen the subject a bit more than the background. And on that, I usually use, clarify or texture sliders. And I cannot say any numbers because it depends on the image.
Yeah, sure. And
all of these sliders, clarify, texture, sharpness, all of these sliders are just applying different levels of contrast, in a different way. There's really no sharpness is a myth, in my opinion. It's really just contrast.
It is, and but isn't these AI thing like really cool, isn't it? Even in Lightroom and stuff now, you can have these subject identifications. You just basically click on the button and it highlights the subject, or whatever you want, humans and animal. You just detects it, so you can apply just on the subject itself, without affecting the rest of it. So really awesome. But I echo both of your comments there about the sliders on the textures and stuff. But also bear that in mind, and the easiest way to find exactly what each slider does is that when you play around with your raw files, or your raw file in particular, is to slide the slider extremely to the right, to 100%, then you know exactly what that does. Because you need to strike a balance between all these sliders. You can't have one really over the top and not the others, and things and so forth, because too much texture will also increase the noise appearance on the actual image itself. Because don't forget, especially in high ISO settings, and the lower ISO setting may not be so bad, but even that, if you push the texture slider too heavily, you will see those little dots starting to appear, which look very unsightly. So don't do that. And then same thing for the haze or all the other sliders that could increase contrast locally, but it could also makes it very, very horrible to look at, depending on the contrast line in the actual image. It might make the line even thicker than what it needs to be, and makes it really horrible, like a drawing. And sharpness, and you really have to be careful as well. Sharpness also improves noise level. If you do it incorrectly. And like what Peter and Rob just said, you have to use the mask so you can just do the edges. But also it really depends on how you work the files, because if you do if there are a lot of details in the photos, like let's say bird feathers in close-ups, and you have to be very, very careful about how you play with the sliders there. And the texture in that particular instance will actually work better than actually sharpening the edges or using the masking, because texture actually adds to the little details within the image. So if the birds and feathers are more prominent in the frame, so that may work better. So I think you have to do a trial and error to see what works best for you. So I wouldn't say the EM1 Mark II was any softer than Mark III or X or anything else. And if it's really soft, that actually, to me, it could be your lens, because and the lens could be one of the main issues there. It's really depending on what sort of optics you're using. And if you have a sharp lens, you will see the difference immediately. Or even stop down your lens, if you're even a kit lens, if you stop down to 6.3 or even f8, you may find better contrast and better sharpness out from shooting wide open to 4.5, 3.5, whatever the setting is. And so bear in mind as well, the bigger the aperture setting, usually not the sharpest. So you have to stop down the lens to get the optimal sharpness in that case. So just something that you have to play with to find out exactly what works best for you. Oh, Tom is here. Tom is in the house. Hello, Tom. And Tom is another OM system ambassador in the UK, and that's good to see you here. The Live ND works well, and I use Nissi Glass ND and barely touch them anymore. Fantastic. So there's another people agreeing with the new Live ND features, and like you said already, it's really effective, very good, and I truly agree that for me, like I said, creatively, it's a very fantastic tool for me. Okay, let's go for the next. Ken. The camera seems to have generated a lot of interest. Oh no, sorry, I already seen this one. I got confused now. How come the messages got mixed up here for some reasons? Okay, let me just gonna continue this. Have you heard anything official about stock availability? Oh, it's another stock question. Nope, there is no stock, unfortunately, and I don't know when the next shipment is, unfortunately. And something you may want to ask your local retailer, and they may have a better idea than I am, actually. And because I don't deal with the sales side of it, it will be hard for me to suggest or even speculate any sort of next shipments and whenever that is. So that is going to be very difficult to predict. And Alan, have OMDS shared any thoughts on future firmware updates on the EM1X? They said they would try, but not guarantee on other subject AI. People detection would be great on OM-1. There's two questions there. So anyone would like to share these questions? So basically, it's about firmware update on the EM1X. That's one question. And second is people detection on the OM-1. Okay, well, Peter, you wanna have something to say about this one?
Yeah, there actually is, in a way, people detect. There is the face detect, but for some reason it's not in the same place in the menu system as the subject detection thing, because it's probably a different technology. But anyways, you can find it from the menu, so that you can track the eyes and the face. So it is kind of there.
Okay, and how about the...
Yeah, that's...
Yep, go on, Rob, sorry.
Oh, that's all I was going to say, is the face detect is the human detect type thing. Because if you're going to be tracking people, you want to focus on their face, and face detect is basically human detect. You're just trying to track people's bodies. That's doesn't make any sense to me. You want to track their
probably
face.
A different genre.
Yeah. Yeah, a little different.
Yeah.
One I'd like to get into, actually. Oh.
Oh, great stuff, great stuff.
Any videos coming?
Yeah, any video, Rob?
Not on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Is that a new platform that we should follow you then, Rob? do tell. Okay. Okay. What about EM1X? Any future firmware update? Well, I guess your guess is as best as we are. You know, like to be quite frank, you know,
Yeah,
like
no idea.
yeah, no idea. And quite frankly, because both Peter and I are official OM system ambassadors, even if you do know something, I don't think we have the authority to actually disclose anything. But just to tell you the truth, frankly, that we don't know anything about any future update on the EM1X. I'm pretty sure there'll be firmware updates for any cameras as and when they need to upgrade certain things or fix certain bugs and something like that. And but to add features, this is something that that is really hard to speculate, and is something that we don't know. One thing that we do know is that OMDS in Japan did actually did a statement recently about the new OM-1 camera, and they're saying that the OM-1 camera is so powerful, the processor is so powerful, and there is a lot of room left for future improvements, for feature updates, and something like that. So that means that we should expect some big firmware updates in the future, very much like the EM1 Mark II when they did the 2.0 and 3.0. That jump was significant, and especially in video terms. And then that was really significant for CAF. I'm talking about continuous AF in video mode. It was really cool. The from firmware 2.0 to 3.0, that was a big jump there. So if they mention something like that, that means the OM1 could potentially get something bigger in the very near future. So I think you're gonna have to watch this space and just wait and see what OMDS has come up with in terms of firmware update for the OM1. But for anything else, unfortunately, I don't think anyone would know. And apart from people who are working on those cameras and to see what the future holds. Okay, and let's look at the next one here. Right, Anastasia, hi. Hey guys, does anyone with the new OM1 is owning a Hano Pro Cube 2 and have tried to charge the new batteries in the slots for BLH batteries? Do you guys use any Hano Pro Cube 2?
Yeah, I do. It doesn't work. I bet. I haven't tested it, but it seems that it doesn't work. It's a bit different.
It's
size
different
battery.
shape anyway. Yeah, it's different shape altogether.
Yeah. Yes, and I think they have said that they will launch a module because it's a modular system. You can switch the top and you can have different batteries. So there might be hopefully a adapter for the new battery. So you don't have to buy the whole thing. You can just buy the battery. I hope.
Okay. If not, you can always buy the new OM system charger, and that is actually a very good charger. And as far as I can tell, because it does use a USB-C connection, so that means that you can actually charge both batteries on the go if you connect to a compatible power bank that has enough output for USB-C PD module, and then so you can actually do that. I think that is pretty good. So you don't have to have access to main socket to charge the battery. So for those who are going to or intend to go out for a long period of time, and that charger, that investment, I think is definitely worthwhile. Plus, you know, you can get a combo with the battery, save yourself $20 or £20 or €20, and for that particular combo, get extra battery and the charger itself. I think it's very worthwhile doing so, and you can charge two at the same time, and that's really good.
Now, I have to answer the second part of that. I have a generic BLH1 charger here. So this is unofficial. I don't recommend it, but this is what I've done.
Okay.
Is it doesn't fit because the new battery is about 1 millimeter longer. So I just use a rubber band to hold it like this. To hold it in the charger like that. And then I put this on the back to kind of give it a little extra force forward. And I've charged this battery about 3 times in this charger.
Wow.
Just so you know, that's
okay.
I'm having a little.
Okay.
There we go, like that. And this is a generic charger, and it didn't generate any excessive heat. It was not hot at all or even warm. It charged the battery very slowly at 500 milliamps. The light turned green when it was done, and when I put it in the camera, it was 100%. So,
okay.
And I've done that 3 times.
Good to know.
One of those things. Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
Try at your own risks.
At your own
Oh, yeah.
risk, right?
Well, that's
But-
good to know. That's good to know. Yeah, at the moment I'm just plugging into the USB-C because I only got one battery anyway, so like, I just plug it in, and
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing. Okay, that's good to know. Frankson,
Because the pins line up.
oh, they actually do line up, all of them.
Yeah, the pins line up. It's just the battery doesn't fit
Okay.
because it's a little bit longer. So that's why I use a rubber band, like force down and force forward a little bit this way.
Maybe
times,
try
no
the original BLH1 battery charger. That may work too.
Yeah. Have you thought of changing your channel to Rob Trick?
Rob Tricks.
robtrick.com.
That might send the wrong message. That's on my pay-per-view channel.
Oh, the same genre we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. 18 only. Okay. Okay. So we get another one here. Would you know whether subject movement, artifact, leaves, water have been improved in a high-res mode? Okay, for those of you who have used it, anyone who's used it and experienced and can share any insight about this?
Yeah, I did a bunch
I've tested
this
it,
morning.
and the fact that it's much faster, so it's kind of like can handle movement a bit better because it's so much faster. But I haven't really seen any big differences in all the artifacts and stuff like that. If the subject is moving fast, then it's not the right way to do it. But as it is a lot faster, it is also a lot better in that sense.
Yeah. And Rob, do you have something to share?
Yeah, and I'm taking a look real quick.
Okay, I can give you the screen.
Uh,
So while you're looking for it, and let me tell you my experience. I haven't got one to show you at the moment. It's in my library. I haven't actually exported it out. I did a handheld high res using my 40 to 150 at 150 handheld high res. That's crazy, because a long focal length plus handheld high res, and you really working the IBIS to the maximum to get that sort of thing working. And because it does it so fast now, like what Peter just said, and it actually does work. And the couple of high res shots that I did, and I didn't do a lot, and they all come up pin sharp. So it shows that handheld high res shot really works in like long range tele shots as well now, because previously it's not recommended. You're trying to do like a medium focal length or wider focal length. It's easier for the IBIS to work for handheld high res. But now I can actually zoom all the way into 150 and it still works. And but do bear in mind that it works better with faster shutter speed. So like you just have to make sure that you still have that rather than trying to have like a half a second shot, because it won't work. Because remember that he's doing pixel shift, that means every shot is going to be half a second, so you have to bear it in mind. So the faster it is, the better it is. But it works, and I did a couple of shots. They both all came out pin sharp. All the details were there. There's no movement there. The only movement were the people who were riding bicycles. So I can see there is still some artifact there, unfortunately. That's my experience anyway. And so what Peter was saying, that if you are going to photograph somewhere with lots and lots of fast movements, I don't think it's still recommended, and it's best for still subjects still. That's always been the case for any handheld high res options that you want to do, whether it's going to be tripod or handheld. I think both would be the same thing. Rob, have you got anything?
yeah, I just looked at the images I took this morning.
Right, you
And,
want to share that, or yeah, okay?
No, I can't.
You've been saying that
it wouldn't show well
that
on
you
a
took this
screen.
morning. How early have you woken up? Because you have shot everything this morning.
Yeah, I shot I got like 5,000 images I did this morning.
My God, 5,000.
All right.
But yeah, there is. I got this one. That's the OM-1. And the EM-1. I compare these two, I'm just looking at them side by side. Yeah, these aren't good comparisons, but I mean, long story short, I still see some very small artifacts. But I'm gonna have to do it again and take, because they were at different exposures, so the shutter speeds were different. So what I did is I did a waterfall, and you know, one was a much slower shutter speed, 1/15 of a second, versus I did 1/8 of a second. Well, it's not that much difference, but side by side, they look. Yeah, the water was moving so fast that even 1/8 of a second to 1/15 of a second is a big difference.
Ah.
I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of artifacts, but it's not a valid comparison is the problem.
Okay. No
But
problem.
let me share this screen anyway.
Okay, let me just
I
give you
can
the
share
screen.
this part.
And okay. Oh, I need to go back to your
I
screen.
got it.
Oh, where's your screen? I'm waiting for the screen. There we go.
So on the left, you can see by the file name, it says OM-1. This is the EM1 Mark III. That's how I do my file names in my camera. And if I back out, oops, you can see the difference. The water is moving pretty fast. So even though this was 1/8 of a second, this was 1/15 of a second, there's still a huge difference just in the motion of the water. But the only place I can find an artifact is maybe down in here. You can see it's kind of artifacting a little bit here, but not so much here. It's a little smoother. In fact, I don't see any artifacts in here as I'm going around. Let me pause it so the YouTube can catch up. But you can see how on the EM1 over here, these blotches, technically these are artifacts, right? Because it's blending pixels together. Whereas on the OM1, it's a little bit smoother. So it seems to be doing a better job. You can stop sharing that. It seems to be doing a better job, but it's the test is flawed, is what I'm saying. So I don't want to draw any conclusions yet.
Yeah.
But my initial impressions are it seems to have less artifacts, but I have a flawed test here. So I'm gonna go out tomorrow morning again and do it.
I mean,
do it
I
again.
my like I said, I took 2 shots, and then both of them did exhibit artifacts for movements, and for people with riding bicycle, obviously slightly faster than usual walking, and but there is a little bit of artifact there. I think that could be improved in a way that I know. I mean, I've heard DP Review, when they did the review on the GX6 Panasonic GX, they said their handheld high-res has dealt with movements. However, the image that they shared in that particular video were very, very rough to see. You can't really see because the vehicles was in a very far distance, very small in the frame. So in that instance, it's not very good demonstrations on movement for in handheld high-res mode, and so I will reserve my judgment on that because I don't think that's a good test. So I probably later on, when there are more users getting their hands on the GX6, and when they share some images, that maybe people can share their things. But in generally, I think because they you're using computational photography, blending multiple images together, and there is obviously things are being calculated in terms of from one place to another for any movements, and they have to interpret anything in between. So there's always going to be something weird going on there, just because it's not a natural movement for that you're capturing. Is an artificial movement, and I guess at some point that can be fixed, because whether it's going to be OM or Panasonic or whoever is going to do these sort of technologies, In particular, I think that OM could potentially solve this much better than anybody else, simply because we have Live ND, which use the same algorithm. So they could potentially use that as a prediction algorithm for the handheld high-res to make that flows a little bit better so that could potentially be a good thing to look forward to in the future. And like I said before, that OM or Olympus before that, and each generation of any computational stuff have been improving gradually. So like people may not actually be aware of it, but for those who've been using the camera long enough, for each generation would definitely notice the improvement. For instance, handheld high-res or high-res, any high-res mode, if you look at the original ones, and in EM5 Mark II and then the EM1 Mark II, look at those cameras compared to what we have now. What we have is significantly better than anything that we had before. So is Live ND, even Live ND now. I think this is the third generations now, and the high-res mode and the handheld high-res, because EM1X was the first one that has handheld high-res, then the EM1 Mark III, then now the OM1. So the third generation now is again better. That coupled the fact that we have now faster processor, things are a lot quicker, a lot better. So so we are looking at improvements over the generations and perhaps future firmware updates. So I guess this is something that we have to wait and see what happens in the future. But this is also another thing that you guys want to get your hands on the camera. You may want to try out yourself to see whether this is something that you can tolerate, or is something that you find it useful. But do come back to us and let us know whether this something that is something that you find it quite interesting and an option that you're going to use it for your photography. Okay, let's move on to the next question here. I found one that is quite interesting, and let me just see it. Right, that's good to know. Tom just actually say that the Live ND tops out at 60 seconds. So for those who are going to use the Live ND option, and that's a maximum duration that you can set is 60 seconds for the Live ND. So that's good to know. Okay. Oh, where's that question now? Sorry, I've highlighted so many. I just need to look for them now. Okay. Question to all of you. Suppose you only have a wonderful M10 II, suppose you talk about EM10 Mark II, and a good lens, 12 to 40 Pro. I'm not sure what the question is. Sorry. I just highlighted it. Are you suggesting whether the 12 to 40 Pro is a good lens for the EM10 Mark II?
I think they're asking is it worth upgrading if that's what they have now?
It's again, it really depends on. It really depends on your photography, and like I said, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from buying the OM-1. Of course, I would encourage you to buy any OM-1s because it's best for the company. And but again, like as a photographer, does the OM-1 give you anything better than the EM10 Mark II? So I guess the question is only you can tell whether you do a lot of tracking stuff, whether you photograph a lot of animal, a lot of moving stuff. Because if you do, definitely the OM-1 is vastly superior than the EM10 Mark II from that department alone. Because tracking is perhaps OM-1 is the best at the moment in terms of tracking. So if you do that a lot, yeah, that would be a much better camera than the EM10 Mark II. And so is video. If you intend to use EM10 Mark II to video something, and not that it's bad, but then the OM-1 is again vastly improved. You got more bit rates, got more high res, got more frame rate options, got better details, better colors, everything. But if into general photography, travel photography, I think the EM10 Mark II is good enough for a lot of cases. It's small, it's light, and then the only thing is obviously not weather sealed. But apart from that, you can get a lot of good photos from it, and it's still a functional camera. I mean, I have my EM5 Mark II still hanging around here, and every now and then I take it out for a spin, and so it's a good camera. So there's no reason you should upgrade unless you need the new features. That's what I'm trying to say. And so you have to answer that yourself, I guess. And you got a good lens there for sure. 12-40 Pro is a good lens. So you got a good lens, which is good. So whether you need a body is really something you can only you can answer, unfortunately. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next one here. Oh, I actually missed the question. I don't know where that's gone. Sorry about that. Okay, is that one here? What about stage lighting, low light situation? I've shot many dance performances with Ollies, but it would be great if the OM-1 didn't have used DxO noise so much, so if we were more effective. So this is about low light shooting. And has anyone done any low light shooting with the OM-1 yet?
Oh, only in my studio, meaning, you know, my kitchen table. I would say that if that is your, if you do that professionally, low light, like that kind of thing, you may want to consider like a low megapixel full frame or something. It really depends on how well other cameras autofocus in low light. I know the OM-1 is phenomenal. The M1 Mark III is phenomenal in low light autofocusing. And that's more important, I'd say, than trying to fix the noise in post, because that can be done with DxO. But I think, you know, Jimmy, you're a better person to ask because you've done event photography and you do run into low light situations more.
I do. And so my take on it is, first of all, first thing I noticed in your question is stage lighting. Right. And it really depends on situations, to be quite frank. And because on stage, especially stage performances, you find that most of the time people using spotlights or backlighting, and then you don't really need to push the ISO too high unless you're using a very slow lens. You know, if you got 1.2 Pro lenses, you know, most cases you can get away with the 1600 ISO, which is not high at all in today's standard, and you don't really need to use too much noise reduction softwares. I mean, the situation when you need to start using DxOs or anything like that to clean up things to make it look more presentable is when you get up to like 6400 and above, and that's the only chance you need to do that. But unless your stage performance are very fast moving, like proper dance and things like that, and you need the shutter speed to capture the movement, then in that case you might need to bump up the ISO to capture that movement, so that to freeze the frame, and in that case you may need to do that. But regardless, and I mean, if this is something that you do day in day out, and if freezing a frame is important to you in that sort of scenarios, I would concur. You know, I think that you may be looking at the wrong system here. And having said that, you know, that depends how frequent you do. If this is something you occasionally do that, I don't think DxO is a bad idea, and or any sort of AI noise reduction software, because they are pretty quick these days. That you can do batch process, so it's only a matter of integrating that into workflow. You can select a whole series of cold images and chuck it to pure raw or something like that. It only takes about like 5-10 minutes to churn them all out, cleaned up, and it's all completely usable in high ISO. And that's what I've been doing, and for all my low light situation shots, and because I don't have many, even if I shoot a event, I think that it's only a handful of images that I think I need to push it that high, to be quite honest. But that's only my take on it for my photography, and obviously yours might be very, very different. And like I said, if you do need to freeze a frame in ultra low light situation, then you may want to find other systems slightly more beneficial, because you may get slightly better quality in ISO 12,800, for instance, and if you do need to use that sort of ISOs. But having said that, you know, you have seen journalists and old photographers using film cameras pushing and still capture live performances on stage in the past, and they are only using ISO 800 films. So like, you tell me what's the tricks there. So I guess it's a lot to do with skills levels and also predicting what sort of thing they do. And don't forget that photography is not just about the technical settings. Sometimes it's also about experience and how you anticipate a shot as well, because this anticipation is something that most photographers has lacking these days, especially because when they see a scene is interesting, they just snap, and hopefully they get one frame that's right. But as an observer, because photographers are observing everything, so as an observer, you're there, you're seeing things, and you have to anticipate where the height is going to come, and you're going to have your camera ready for that moment, not by clicking continuously and randomly, because that you're wasting shots, you're wasting your time, you're wasting a lot of time like looking through all those images when you come back in post. And so anticipation is something that you have to learn and master, you know, when you do stage performances, because if you're familiar with that particular performance, you know when they're going to do certain things, right? You know when they're going to jump and do raise their hand. You know that moment, and when you know that, you anticipate it. You don't need a very fast shutter speed to do that, and then and that way you can get with a lot of things. You can have better image quality, you have the best moments, and using slightly lower ISO, you can capture something really awesome there. So that's something that I guess a takeaway, I guess, for you for that particular thing. But like I said, I don't know your photography. If you need to have that ultra high stuff, yeah, then obviously something that I would suggest you may want to look at something else. And Peter has something to say.
Oh, do I?
Oh, I don't know. I thought you raised your hand.
I guess I do. Yeah, I think it's all about if you really need to do that all the time, like everyone else has already said on this panel here, is that you know, maybe something else might be the thing for you. But also, like Rob said, that the AF performance in low light is very, very good. So that might be also the thing that I would rather get really sharp images and then fix the noise issues if that is an issue, rather than, you know, missing the focus and have clean images. But, you know, it depends, of course, on the situations that you have. So it's really, really hard to say.
Right. Yes, indeed. So thank you for that. And right, I've got a few more news stuff here, and let's see. By the way, Ben is in the house. I don't know if anyone noticed that. The narrowband channel, and for those who don't know who Ben is also an Olympus OM user, and he's an expert in astrophotography. He has a little channel dedicating in astrophotography stuff, so you can go and check out and subscribe his channel, and he's got some awesome contents over there. So if you've got any question about astro stuff, don't ask any of us here, and ask him directly in the chat room. Okay, just let's go continue. Let's find another questions here. Okay. Oh yeah, I remember the question now. And the one that I was missing is, for some reason, it's not in my highlighted section now. Is why is only certain lenses are compatible with high-speed shooting? I think we talked about it just before the stream started, Peter and Rob. Apparently, Peter, you noticed that it's actually in the announcement, isn't it, in the OM system? So not all lenses are supported.
Yeah, there's a list on OM systems page that says which ones are compatible. And for example, the new 40-150 f4 is not compatible with 50 frames per second with continuous autofocus. It can only do 25. I mean, only 25, which is plenty anyways. But I think might be the motor, or could be some differentiation with products or something. I really don't know why that is. It is so, but check out the list if you need that high speed and continuous autofocus. Check out the list.
Right. Good to know. I've got an interesting one here. Okay, Gigafish 2x0 saying that, do you think OM system will implement AF tracking similar to Sony's AI-based real-time tracking? Right, that is an interesting take, because the OM-1 does have the AI tracking. It's real-time, and if you go into the subject tracking mode, any of the subject tracking, one of the fives, whether it's going to be plane, animals, or birds or whatever, they are real-time tracking. And but the thing is, obviously that depends how you set up your cameras, and if you in stills mode, so PASM, not movie mode, PASM, you will need to hold the shutter button halfway to activate the CAF, so you can see it continuously tracking, but it will highlight the subject continuously, but you won't see it focus until you hit the shutter button halfway. And if you want to see it continuously tracking it, you have to continue holding the shutter button halfway, and that's when you can see it tracking continuously. And to be honest, I don't see the disadvantage, by having the motor on constantly. The only downside is draining your battery faster. So like you just have to make sure that you are okay with that. And but yeah, you have the option there to do the real-time tracking if you really want to. Similarly for face tracking on the OM-1, if you keep pressing the shutter button halfway, it will continue to track the subject continuously until you let go. And that's always been the case in any Olympus cameras in the past. And for any CAF to work, you have to basically half press it all the time in any of the PASM mode. Unless in video is continuous. As soon as you actually switch it on, that is continuous. So you don't have to do anything. It just stays on all the time. That's in video mode. Okay, that's. I've got another one here. Right. Do you use the EVF while shooting video, or you rely on the screen? I'm sad that they didn't include the option to punch to focus while rolling. That's for video, so I guess we all shoot a little bit videos. And anything you may want to comment on this? I do use the EVF to shoot, especially in bright daylight, as you can imagine, because the screen, even set to maximum brightness in bright daylight, is going to be hard to see. So I do use the EVF, and that's one of the reasons I said earlier why the new EVF has changed the game so much for me, because in that sort of situation, and I have to rely on the EVF to see what's going on, and in that case, a sharper, brighter EVF is always beneficial in that case. And what about you, Rob? What's your experience on that?
I generally use the LCD for video because I'm on a tripod or a track, a dolly when I'm doing my video, or on a gimbal. The EVF has never really been for my paid work. For my personal work, I don't do enough video to say. The little bit I did this morning, I did use the EVF for the video, and that's when having the high-res EVF really helped. And that's when I really noticed it. Before today, I didn't really appreciate it. But today when I went out and I tried to do some video using the EVF, I was really impressed. The punch and focus, you can rely on the autofocus pretty well. If you have to manually focus, I believe you can activate the focus peaking in video mode. I know you're able to do it on the previous OMDs, but I'm not 100%. I didn't try it on the OM-1, to be honest, if that's still available, but it should be.
Yeah, but that
I'm usually more concerned.
Yeah, that only works with like autofocus lenses with electrical contacts. If you're like using third-party manual lenses, the auto peaking, as the auto magnify and peaking, will not work in that instance, because the camera doesn't even know there's a lens in front of it, and so it has to be a lens that with electrical contact for that option to work perfectly. But I think yes, you're quite right that you can actually do that if you set it up correctly in the menu. And Peter, I think you share the same things, and you probably know better than these sort of settings.
Yeah, I use LCD quite a lot if I on tripod, but then I do run and gun stuff. Then of course EVF, so it's like 50-60, as we say here in Finland.
Right. Okay. Regarding custom shooting setting dial, any way to rename these in the menu so you can actually remove what you have assigned to each value? Peter, you're an expert in this custom setting stuff.
Am I? Well, I know something, but no, you cannot rename them. They are just, the names that they have there. If I understood the question correctly.
Yep. But what we do have now is expanded or extended my menu now, and within the OM-1, so you can literally customize the whole menu system yourself within the OM-1, and which is quite crazy because even on the older system you don't have, I think 3 pages? I can't remember now, 2 or 3 pages, but now you have like 6 or 7 pages now. And I actually don't know exactly the numbers, but it's quite a lot you can actually put into my menu now. And so you can access things a lot quicker if you really want to. So instead of scrolling through different pages within the menu, because it can get quite overwhelming, as you can imagine. This is a feature-packed camera, so it's got a lot of stuff going on. So you can set up your favorite settings within my menus and for different things altogether. So that's quite good. And I think Peter's checking now how many pages you have.
It's 5 pages.
5 pages, yeah. 5 pages is a lot.
5 times 7, so 35.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's more than enough for most frequently used options anyway, and so that is really good. Okay, I think we probably answered most of them. I guess let me just see if there's anything that I'm missing at the moment, or anybody else have any other further questions you would like to ask us before we wrap up today's Oh, Matt Susie.
Yeah,
I just saw him. What's up, guys? Oh, hello there. It's good to see you there, and good to see you. Good to see you. That's fantastic. We got so many Olympus people here. That's excellent news. That's excellent news.
Yeah, they heard I was coming on, so.
Yeah, you are the magnet.
Yeah, exactly.
You are the magnet, Rob.
That's why you're in the middle.
Yeah, I'm the wild card. See.
No, don't
No, but
forget.
I see a question here from C&H Adventures. He's asked a few times, I think even on my channel, and I haven't found a medium to answer him properly. But the question is, what happens when the buffer fills? And I've been filling the buffer several times per shoot because I've been shooting the high speed 50 FPS to 25 FPS. And basically, you can get about 90 to 95 shots in the buffer. I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere between there. And when that fills up, the camera continues to shoot, but it can only shoot as fast as your memory card is. Now, with a quality UHS-1 card, you drop to about 1 frame per second. By quality, meaning like the 80, 90 megabits per second UHS-1 cards, you drop to about 1 frame per second. With the UHS-2 cards, I'm using a pro-grade 250 megabit write speed card. I was getting about 2.5 frames per second after the buffer filled. And I'm going to do a whole video on that, pro capture and buffer and all of that. But that's the direct answer.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And I always suggest that if you a fast shooting type of photographer, that is highly recommended to get a UHS card, UHS-2 cards, for the fastest write speed that you can get, because there are two or three different types of UHS-2 from different brands. I think they started from 230 megabit per second to 290 to 300, which is currently the maximum. And but you never get to 300. Most cases you're gonna get 295, 290, something like that. I think there was a website who tested all these UHS-2 memory cards in the past, and I don't think he tested anymore. And but about 4 years ago, and he was testing all the new SD cards and CF cards and whatnot, everything. And he have an extensive list on these memory card speed on different cameras, which is actually very cool to see that. And apparently at the time, I think the last camera that he tested for Olympus, the OM-1 Mark II that he had, and based on the UHS-2 compatible cameras, and apparently Olympus came up first in terms of write speed internally. So Olympus actually had the fastest writing speed in the entire world at the time, and for UHS-2 memory cards, because even Sony, Canon at the time, they labeled them their machine as UHS-2 compatibles, but they weren't writing at theoretical maximum speed. They were only writing at 220, 230, while Olympus EM-1 Mark II were writing at 280, which is a lot faster than any of those people's. And so this is something that manufacturers never tells you any of those stuff, because they only tell you UHS-2. That's it. They don't tell you exactly what speed they're writing at. And because it's down to how they integrate it into the system, the motherboard, the circuit board, the circuitry, everything is all part of it. So it's something, I'm hoping that he continue his work, because it's actually quite an interesting website. And if I find it, I'll link it in the description below later. But I don't think he does any further work since then, and he's simply stopped making any new comparisons and things like that, because it's a lot, as you can imagine, it's a lot of work there, different memory cards, different camera systems, and he spent a lot of time doing that sort of tests. But it was interesting to know, and I did reference to his website in the past, and because it's a very interesting website, and to see all those different numbers, and for those number geeks out there, it would be very interesting to see. Right, I got an interesting one here. I just found it, and it's the OM-1 E-shutter susceptible to LED bending, 50-60 hertz lighting, like fluorescent or LED bulbs. Guys, anything you can shed some lights on? I have my own take on this. Let's start with Rob. Yep.
Sorry.
You probably took some images this morning.
Yeah, if you act, okay, there's two different types of settings in the camera. There's the flicker reduction setting for photos, and then there's the flicker setting in movie mode. And so whenever you're using silent shutter, it's definitely susceptible to banding when you're doing continuous shooting, or any kind of shooting, really. Even a still shot, you might get one that's banded, one that's not, one that's too bright, one that's too dark. So when you activate the flicker reduction, in theory, you could reduce the reaction time of the shutter from the time you press the shutter button. But it's supposed to sense the flicker in the scene and take a picture when it's not flickered. I haven't tested that specifically, but I did take a few shots with the flicker reduction activated, and I didn't get any banding, but I haven't done extensive testing on it. So is it susceptible? Short answer is yes. Can you mitigate that? Yes, with the flicker reduction setting in the camera. Only in silent shutter. Mechanical shutter, you don't have to worry about it at all, really.
Sure. And what about Peter?
Yeah, I have nothing to add. That was a perfect answer.
Yep. And I haven't actually shot anything low light, to be quite honest. And in terms of LED or artificial lighting indoor, since I got the OMD, apart from just shooting around in my house, any professional shoots I've done so far are daytime, outdoor. So I haven't seen anything that I needed to look at the moment. But based on my experience, that any e-shutters, any electronic shutter will have banding issues, and because they run differently, and unless you're talking about global shutter, which is very, very different technology altogether, and because you're not scanning through from top to bottom and so forth. So like this is when you see the banding going on, depending on frequency. When you have global shutter and everything go all at once, and then that's when you don't see any banding at all. But that's still a maturing technology. Obviously, it's very different to what we have and what most cameras have at the moment. So it's only a few global shutter sensors out there at the moment, but usually LED bandings, artificial bandings are always there. There are two ways of mitigating it. One is what Rob said, using the anti-flicker option, which allow you to dial in a very fine shutter speed to kind of get into that groove in the frequency. So you're trying to minimize it. Or you can do slower shutter speed if that is something you can do. Sometimes if I'm shooting indoor in artificial lighting scenarios, I would try to use lower shutter speed. For instance, let's say 50 hertz, I'll do 1/50 second, and then and that way you actually won't see any banding at all using e-shutter. And but obviously, if 1/50 second is too slow for freezing any frames, then you have to bump it up, and that's the time you may want to use anti-flicker. However, if you do anti-flicker, you will find that there's a little bit of a lag there. So you have to be mindful of that. So you may not be able to capture the moment that you want if you're using anti-flicker option. And because any fine shutter speed like that, you talk about point something shutter speed, it's going to be very, very hard for the computer to work. And so you just have to be mindful that there is something going on behind the scene, and it does take a little bit of time to adjust. Other than that, I always recommend people to use mechanical shutter in indoor and to mitigate the problems altogether. That's something you just have to be careful when it comes to shooting things like that. Okay, let's see. I think there's another one here. Live composite shooting. Is there a way to reduce the minimum shutter speed below 0.5 seconds? And also, is there a way to increase the time interval between each frame? Okay. Peter, you are the expert.
Again, no, there isn't. The half a second is the shortest. And the other question, I think there is no possibility either. So it will take the shot right there when the next one is kind of done. Then it takes the another one and adds if there is any more light in it. But yeah, that's, I think, is the right answer this time.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Right, we've got Ben here asking a question. Ben, how does the OLCD compare to the new OLED in contrast and brightness? Are you talking about the? I think he's talking about the EVF, and because the back panel is still LCD, the EVF is OLED. So yeah, anyone can share the experience, and for me, it's great. And Rob, would you like to? You already mentioned that at the beginning of the stream.
Well, I can. Yeah, it's definitely the contrast, the image quality is much better. Of course, the resolution, the brightness. If I eyeball it, it feels about the same, but because it's clearer, you can see it better. That said, I have a light meter, and I'm going to measure the light output from the EVF and the LCD and compare it and see if there's actually any difference. Because if I just rely on my dying eyes,
same here.
It's a flawed test, right? So I actually have an instrument to measure the light output. So, and I'll just make a post or something about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do a whole video on it.
But generally speaking, and the OLED is definitely high contrast, so you do see things. Like the perceived sharpness has improved because you got deeper black, you got brighter brights, and then everything seems to look a lot clearer. Not only the resolutions, but also things just look sharper because of the deeper black. So the lines comes out a lot sharper, so everything just come out greater. So that's the big difference there when you see the new EVF, and
that in turn makes it easier to see in brighter light.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then there is also thing that I got a message from someone who was using it that said that doesn't need to use focus peaking that much when using manual focus. So that tells quite a bit.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I do that as well. Yeah, I tested some manual lenses lately, and the new EVF is almost tells me it's in focus. I don't really need to see the peaking that much. In fact, peaking may work adversely because the red, whatever peaking colors you choose, it thickens the line, so you actually can't tell whether it's actually in focus or not, and unless you do a punch in, and so that says a lot for the new high res EVF, and you can actually see things a lot better, a lot clearer. So Christopher have a questions here, and about the menu system. Do you need to remake your menu system for video, or is it easy enough to use with them? I suppose that he's talking about a new menu system for videos in particular. It's definitely expanded compared to the older video menu, and is a lot. I think it's quite easy to use, to be honest. The way that they lay out the menus now is very, very Canon-like. Very it's top to bottom, and you have 7 new categories running across the screen, left to right, and within each category, so you got another 5 or 6, 7 pages, depending on what option it is. It's quite easy to navigate. But the way you used to navigate using the four-way buttons at the back of the camera doesn't quite work with the new ones, and you have to use the front and back dials to navigate, which is something you have to get used to. And but I'm pretty sure that once you use the system long enough, in a week or two, you're going to get fully fluid, and then it's going to be okay with it. But yeah, the initial shock with how to move around within the system can be a little bit overwhelming, and because if you're using Olympus system for a long time, and this is definitely a cultural shock to me, to any of you. Okay. Well, Martin has a thing say that. What about my question hour ago about ID tech? Sorry if I missed your question. Okay, ID texting works great, and Peter and Rob can definitely share that. It works really well for both human and animals and birds. If you're using any of the AI subject tracking mode, it highlights the eye very well, especially in the AI subject tracking. Even when the eye is very small. In distance, the system can still identify it. Face detections, on the other hand, depending on how far your subject is, and it will highlight the face first. Then, if you start getting close enough, it will highlight the eye as well. And but definitely not as small as the animals in the subject tracking modes, in any of the subject tracking mode. That's how I find anyway so far. But it's accurate because I think that Michael 4/3 the inherent deeper depth of field doesn't affect too much, so you don't need very small eye detection for humans. And that because when you're at distance, when you're like 10 feet away, to be quite honest, if you focus the face, your eyes will be in focus anyway. So I don't think there is a point to highlight the eye in any cases, unless you're starting getting close. And when you're shooting 1.2 lenses, and that may be a different story altogether. But in generally, I don't think you need to. And so that's okay. But to answer your question, yes, eye detection is really good. It works very well. It's definitely improvement over the EM1 Mark III. It's definitely a lot faster. In the AI subject tracking mode, in birds and animals, it's fantastically well. It's really, really good. You have to try to see it. In fact, I have a videos, and I think Rob did one as well, and highlighting the animal tracking. So you can actually see the eye detected the animals really well, very quickly as well. It just identifies it. Really, just basically, as soon as you point the camera to the animal, it just highlights the eyes very quick, and that's how good it is. Right.
Yeah, and I tested the EM1 Mark III against one of the Canon R something, I can't remember now, but the face detect was equivalent to the Canon on the EM1 Mark III. The OM-1, the little bit I've done, I can tell it's already better, and the eye detect is even better. So it's as good as any system out there, in my opinion. If Canon is a benchmark, I think OM-1 should be the benchmark now, to be honest. But
it is good, and I guess you just need to try to see it. Like I always say, don't trust any of us. Don't listen to any words of us. You can listen to it, but you have to draw your own conclusion. Once you try the camera yourself, have to test it yourself. Hold the camera, shoot something randomly, put your own memory card, test everything yourself. Then you know whether that's a camera for you. But if you ask us, we give you our opinions, and then this is how we feel about the cameras, and it's it could easily be the best Olympus / OM system a camera by far to date, and that's for sure. And but there is one thing that Martin's got another question here. Till now, I can't see any difference by eye detection OM1 compared to EM1 Mark III. Hope it will come with firmware update. How should we have potential to be competitive with other brands' flagships? Well, we said what we said already, and I think it's as good as any, and I have tried other system before. To be quite honest, a lot of the cameras that I tried, including Fujifilms and Sony that I've tried, yes, it highlights the eyes, maybe in a more how would I put it, in a more artistic way, graphically. In the viewfinder, so it makes it look like it's cooler in a way, but does it do a better job? I'm not entirely sure. It looks the same to me. You know, I shot professionally for many years, and I've used EM1 Mark II, Mark III, X, and the OM-1 now. And but I can see that obviously EM1 Mark II and X doesn't have the eye detect as well as the later generation like the Mark III and the OM-1. And but compared to other system, I think, okay, you may not say that they're better than others, but definitely on par with others. That's what I would say when it comes to eye detections. And I wouldn't say they're any worse. And if anything that is come out bad, it will be human error in some cases. It depends how you set up your cameras, whether you know how to operate a camera properly. That will be my first instance, because I have seen time and time again about users complaining about certain lenses and cameras when they shows the sample images is clearly that they have set the camera wrong, and that's for sure. So like I know that it's very easy to draw a conclusion when you just use the camera a few times, and also if you are not familiar with the subject that you're shooting, you may be setting something wrong, and so you just have to make sure that you play around long enough to draw that conclusions, because even myself, I make same mistakes when I have a new camera. When I'm trying to test out new features, I make lots and lots of mistakes because I don't know how to use it, and it takes some time to get used to the system, get used to the new features, and make sure that I'm doing something right. And like bird tracking, I'm not a bird photographer, for instance, and but for the sake of testing out the new AI features, I've been trying very hard myself and trying to do something properly, and I still miss shots. That's for sure, and it's not something I'm 100% for everything. Like I said, I'm a professional portrait photographer. I deal with people. I don't deal with animals a lot. So if you ask me about anything about portraits and people, I'm okay with that. But anything about animal, no. But I'm just trying it out, and all I can say so far is pretty fun. Okay, let's see another questions here before we wrap up. Let's take 2 more questions because it's running long enough now, and I'm pretty sure all our guests are very tired, especially Peter, and it's very late on your side now, and it's 11:30, isn't it? It's 1 hour ahead of us.
No, 2 hours.
2 hours. Oh, it's past midnight. Oh my god. Right, let's wrap this up.
It's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
Everything looks fine tomorrow, because here it is already Wednesday.
Okay, let's check this. Okay, I don't find any more significant question that we may need to answer here, but okay, let's wrap this up then. And so sorry if I can't. I missed your questions or anything like that because there are quite a few of you guys talking, and so it's always a tricky situations in live stream like this, and unless there is a moderators, and obviously 3 of us are live at the same time, so it's quite hard to keep track of everything. And but I welcome you guys, and thank you for all coming over and asking questions and listening to us for all this time, which is phenomenal, and very supportive of you. And once again, remember that I do have a charity page set up to donate to the Ukraine. And if you guys feeling generous, the link is down in the video description. You can click on it, donate anything you can, and it's all for good causes. Go straight to the British Red Cross, and the fund will go directly to whoever needs them in over that region there. So thank you very much for coming, and if you have any other questions, you're very welcome to leave in the comment section below, and that will form hopefully the next live chat, and we can ask the same gentlemen here once again, and when we have an opportunity for the last word. And remember to check out Peter and Rob's channel, and they're phenomenal, and both are very experienced Olympus and also Michael Four Third photographer and creators. And of course, anybody else within the chat room, I know there are some big people there as well, like Matt, like Ben, and I saw Tom earlier. So they all have channels actually in YouTube space. So you can also check out their channel as well. They're all different genre. One is wildlife, and one is astrophotography, like I mentioned. So there are so many good people within this community. So thank you once again for supporting us. And no doubt that we're going to see each other very, very soon. And we'll see Peter and Rob coming back in, and also Robin in the very near future. Once he has the time, and I'm sure that I'll invite him over and have a little chat about his shutter therapy. That's for sure. Okay, so thank you once again for joining us, and I will speak to you all very, very soon. And see you all very soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.